And I'll need to be guided as to time. I'll open up the iPhone, not to read from it, but because I was given 40 minutes, but your face will be the clock, so I'll put this away. And so...
That's all right for you, yeah? Okay.
It's you have to tell me. Luckily, I can't hear my own voice.
Not in your way, yeah.
Thank you very much. And you'll have to guide me if I drift away. So, I want to thank the organizers of the Heinrich Böll. It's an honor. I want to mention regarding my publishers that I have two. And as I actually put in the poem, where would we be without our publishers? And the answer is we wouldn't. Salmon was already mentioned. I want to mention Lapwing. First of all, the great news happened here yesterday that a lapwing nest. But sadly, the founder with his wife, Rini, Dennis Grieg of Lapwing, passed away on Christmas Day. So I'd like to give him a thought here, because no publisher, no poet. And there are a lot of fine poets who are not published, and any home that I've ever been in had Emily Dickinson and Jared Manley Hopkins, and neither one of them ever saw a poem of theirs in print. So who knows how many others are out there. So since the new and selected won't be out, I've decided to read simply from the selected, from the 4 books that are there, just to ground myself. And I do want to ask you something. I could read from the 4 books in the order that they were written, or I could read backwards from the most recent to the first. Which would you like? Backwards. Thank you. I'm loving this. I'll start with a poem that isn't in any of the books. That's the shortest poem I ever wrote. Someone asked a question at the end of the last activity about hope. So here's 17 syllables, and it's not a haiku. Hope finishes last in the race, but the rest of the runners are dead. So we'll go, the latest book is a ballet for Martha, that's Martha Graham, and published by Lapwing. They do a beautiful job. And there may or may not be a charming story related to any of these. There probably won't be. I'll just go from one to the other and look at your faces, and we'll take it from there. And so here's the first one, because the first poem should set the mood. So it's called A Ballet for Martha, and there are references in it because different poets and different writers and different scientists and different people who work in offices and so forth always know that things come to them, they can't be explained. So sometimes, for example, Agatha Christie, in her memoirs, she's already written about 40 books, and she's in a tea shop, and she overhears somebody say, "Why didn't they ask Evans?" And the book came. Boom. So I was listening to Appalachian Spring, which is a wonderful piece of music by Aaron Copland, and this came. A ballet for Martha. There they were, and I, too, a child, so I did not recognize them, crossing streets in New York on their way. Martha Graham, Aaron Copland, others. A New York that was. Traffic, noise, art, Appalachian Spring. A bubble blown by sophisticated people about unsophisticated people. Marriage, house building, faith. Vanished before they existed. Never existed except in dance. Quaker tunes which whistled time away. Martha, Aaron, my mother Jayne, Bonwit Tellers, me, vanished. War poems and indignation are not my strength, but every once in a while something peeps in. And this peeped because one of the people I live with is Edward Thomas, the poet Edward Thomas. And I was reading one of his poems, and this came, poof. because with me, one moment a poem isn't there, and one moment it is. The Uncaring Bugle, and it starts with a quote from an Edward Thomas poem. Edward Thomas was killed one of the last days of World War I. From the poem, "The call that I heard and made words to, from no one cares less than I," Edward Thomas. Early in the morning, he wrote a poem which began another day on the battlefield, about the fact that the morning bugle doesn't care what happens to the men. It is good to write a poem early in the morning. The poem is one's own, no one else's. The day is one's own, no one else's. A help sometimes to others. The uncaring bugle helps me. Did Christina Rossetti ever write poems early in the morning? I think she did. Has any other poet since the world began not cared at all, she didn't, about being chic? Yes, many, thank God. I stayed at Staunton's on the Green, which is in Dublin, and this happened. Most of my poems are straight reportage. And they come, and my job is not to screw them up too much. That's poetry. Summer night, Dublin, 2021. Outside my hotel window, two young people continue to talk past midnight. At a table in the hotel garden, murmurs, soft laughter. The heavy air carries it into my room. I wish that they would stop, but my soul wants them to continue indefinitely. Very young voices, one may be a girl's or a boy's whose voice hasn't changed yet. Two brothers, I think. They speak Danish, a language I can recognize but which I cannot understand. There we are. As we were, and for decades thereafter, we would sit outdoors, talking quietly in the quiet, in a language which was our own, sometimes until dawn. Love, familial and of every other conceivable kind, rubs the edges off words. The soft knot of being together, the soft knot of being together at the same time, in the same place. This may, by one weak thread, be connected to the main themes of the Heinrich Böll, or it may not. It's quite short. Sometimes I'm back in grammar school and I feel it's merciful to announce if a poem is going to be long. This is going to be quite short. The Pickwick Papers, 4. That's the number 4. Outside my tent, the monsters are destroying again. Inside is the Bible and the Pickwick Papers. I must leave the tent to help my brothers and sisters. Deliver us from the evil one, because there most certainly is an evil one. Only God is good, the rest is incomprehensible. Sometimes the voice of a child lost in the snow. And I'll stop with this book with, as Joe Wood says in his introduction, I once told him I was, as a typical American, born in 1943, pickled by films, and I still am. So I'll close with this because the film I mentioned in this helped form me. Came out in 1948. Empty street on a rainy day. It's short. Empty street on a rainy day. Empty flat and a pot of tea. Empty poem, which is any poem. Newspaper pages blown about at night on an empty street. One of the pages become a dancer, to dance with the exhausted girl in the red shoes. She dies, of course, as a line in the film goes. Moira Shearer, Anton Walbrook, Massine, artists doing their work of help, as do doctors and firefighters, notes in a bottle, and even Anna Karenina is a note in a bottle. Summer night, 1948. This is a longie. For me, a page and on to the next. That's very unusual. It starts with a quote from Knoxville, summer of 1915 by James Agee. People in pairs, not in a hurry, scuffling, switching their weight of estival body. I'll interrupt myself to say that this was made into a beautiful piece of music by Samuel Barber at the request of a great American soprano, Eleanor Steber. And the record is available. She commissioned it. Anyway, one star does not make night. It takes a few stars, not many for that. My mother, my father were there, talking. I could not understand what they were saying. Sometimes they paused, then paused longer. I wondered, did they know I was even there? They were in their usual words to each other, not many. We were on a back porch. There they were, and the night. I had no word yet for sorrow, but sorrow was. My parents were so young. After they unraveled the life we were having, that night they kept on going in their few words. I think they thought they were happy, that they belonged together, that it is a tender thing to have a conversation which does not become dispute, which trails off into the night and the night carries it. Deep night, where one is glad to have a porch, to have chairs to sit in, to have a flat to go back into, to have a child when they remembered, a child to bring back in. Not to think sorrow is sorrow, not to know that sorrow makes us what we become. In time, my mother became interesting. My father became interesting. I became interesting. This is what sorrow does. This is summer night. This is the ending I am now beginning. This is the ending, my dedicating this poem to so many beautiful American artists, James Agee, Samuel Barber, Eleanor Steber, among them, so many. Their work is done, and the work of my parents is done, and good that I was a part of it. I am a part of it. And so I also dedicate this poem to the patience to be a parent, or the patience to be an artist, as the world continues to fall through space, and as space continues to fall through something larger, and through something infinitely smaller and more patient. Irish grey. There is green, of course, and all those other colours, but for me, grey is Ireland. Irish grey brings out the colours in everything. Paris grey is vibrations of light. Sometimes it hurts the eyes, the glare of it. Irish grey is soft. Ireland and Paris, I have lived in other places, but grey has little to do with them. Paris grey is what it is. Irish grey falls on me like a sorrow. I'll close with this. The Green Ribbon. I write a fair number of poems inspired by art and artists whom I love, whom I refer to as my roommates. By the way, to step into the mire a little, I can't not mention, after hearing what I've been hearing in this, including the last speech, that if anybody would care to read by Hannah Arendt, Lying in Politics, there's nothing that woman missed. Nothing. Anyway, the Green Ribbon. Henry James mentions that when young, he needed Felix Holt, the radical, to work, meaning to write. I too, George Eliot is nourishing. Proust wrote to a friend who was leaving for the country during a miserable winter, bring an umbrella and Middlemarch. Recently, I bought for my old copy of Felix Holt a bookmark of green silk. It seemed right. Excruciating scenes between those who used to love each other. I want such scenes to end quickly, but she takes her time. Everything is given its full measure of observation and empathy. She is one of the few authors who entirely knows what she is talking about. She makes me think maybe as a race, we are not entirely despicable. No, not entirely despicable. Catch me while you have the light. My two publishers trained me, always read the title poem. There may have been a ching in the back, which reminds me to just riff ching. I don't know how many of you ever saw Hello Dolly. I saw the original. But when she walks out or is about to walk out on the miser at the end, she says, and on those cold winter nights, Horace, you can get into bed with your cash register. It's a little lumpy, but it rings. So, catch me while you have the light. And this is, again, straight reportage. And it depends, in a way, on Veronica Lake, who was a beautiful star of the 1940s. It's practically forgotten in Ireland because there are so few cinematheques. But if her name can fill a cinema in New York and London and Paris like this, so she's had the last laugh. And anyway, I wrote this on a placemat in Pierce Station because it all came, and I knew that it had to be the title. And I'll tell you why when I finish it. So it's for Paul T. Dillon, a close friend who lives in Greystones, because I was going to Greystones. It's 1 page long, it's not a page and a half. Pierce Station, Dublin. A blue net stretched across its ceiling keeps objects which my tax euros have paid for from falling on my head. Because of Veronica Lake, the star Veronica Lake, as Ouija entitled his photo of her, which belongs in the Louvre, women who worked in wartime factories were forced to wear snoods so that their hair wouldn't get caught in machinery. My tax euros helped pay for the divine blue snood in Pierce. I drink my coffee bought at the platform shop, await my train to Greystones, feel like a king. A pigeon walks with dignity despite intestinal distress. On the blue net, another king. Pigeons will one day walk through all of Pierce and all of the Louvre and other roofless edifices, as rhododendrons cover the entirety of the island of Ireland, and as God knows what covers the entirety of France. The Angelus rings. Miss Lake looked beautiful. Catch me while you have the light. Catch me while you have the light. Now, I'll come back to the poem. I was at Glenstall Abbey. My life in Ireland, in a way, was among Glencree, Glendalough, and Glenstall. And I was at Glenstall Abbey as a guest. And I donate my books to the bookstore. I consider my poems prayer. And they're bought. And I was in the breakfast room, and a woman came up to me with this book. She was my age, and she was Irish. I'm not Irish. And she said, "Let me tell you why I'm buying your book." I saw the title, I read the poem. Mr. Halperin, I was raised on a farm on the east coast of Ireland, a very remote farm. She's my age. And you know, Mr. Halperin, my mother always called my father Errol Flynn, and my father always called my mother Veronica Lake. So I knew that I got the title from her, and the poem from her. That's how it works. That's how it works. So, another poem. Farewell to a beloved brother. As my late wife might have put it, a grief is a privilege. It meant that you left your flat and met someone. A lot of people never leave their flat. Farewell to a beloved brother. The heavens opened and he went into them. Did he leave anything unfinished? Anything unsaid? Yes, don't drag me back, which must be respected. So no gatherings at the grave, no toasts, no wreaths. He might have lived 200 years ago. That's how long ago the last sight of him seems. Why then did I say farewell? Why am I saying it now? Because it is a more beautiful word than goodbye. It implies a lake, a boat, people who do not dress as people do now, waving and wishing him well. Clouds hovering, but I've already said that. Yes, I'll read, there's a sonnet sequence in this. I'll just read one. Rainbow Girl. There she is, there she was, brilliant. If you didn't know her, and you didn't, this won't mean a thing. If you did, she was the Rainbow Girl, because there is a rainbow, there isn't a rainbow. That is the métier of rainbows. So here she was, there she goes. No idea where this poem is going. I'm smashed. When that happens, color goes every which way. Well, anyway, it's over. Don't think it hasn't been charming. Smashed. Can't reach the 14th line. Neither could she. She'll be back. Jesus. Rainbows. Oh, maybe I'll read another. Yes, this is a long one, and this I will close with. This is also straight reportage. Just to prepare, and then we go to the last book. And then, as Damon Runyon would put it, I get the old heave-ho. A patch, it's called Eiléan. A patch of orange floats on a patch of silver, which floats on a patch of speckled brown. A dragonfly is in the middle. What does it mean? Like music, it means nothing. It is. Mozart means nothing. A dragonfly means nothing. I mean nothing. We are. We, and by we, I mean the part of we that we can't see, float on fields of color which float on fields of color of this we, and now by we, I mean I. Take little account. The patch of orange is a collage done years ago by a good friend. Is it she, the collage? The collage is something she created, which is alive, and this morning in my sitting room, more alive than I. Why is the brown speckled, and why did she put a dragonfly in the middle? Why not? Certain things, Chinese poetry, the thin Callas Aida, the watching of Joe DiMaggio running like an antelope, destabilize. Something is going on at which the soul stirs. A hotel employee wearing a badge that said Leon told me that unfortunately my room was not yet ready. I told him that I had come to New York from France because my wife had just died and I needed to spend time with her mother. And was there someplace I could just lie down? He told me to leave my valise and come back in an hour. When I did, he had left for the day, and his replacement gave me the key to my room. When I entered, I saw on a table a votive candle, a book of matches, and a note. This might help you with your tough time. Leon. Thank you, Leon. Anniversary. This was translated without being published into French and translated into Japanese, and the title cannot be translated because it's for an audience who are you. So it has all three senses of anniversary. If you say, it's my anniversary, in the United States, it's marriage. If you say, it's the anniversary of my father here, it's the anniversary of your father who's dead. And if you live in France, anniversaire is birthday. So my view on being translated is the receiving language has 100% of the vote. And if you have to change what I wrote, change it, please. For example, the film High Noon, you can't translate High Noon into French. So it's the train will whistle 3 times. You can't translate Little Women into French. It sounds like midgets. So it's the four daughters of Dr. March. So anyway, so people translate this as the shawl. Anyway, Jesse, it's the title poem, Ching. Anniversary. One critic said that this was the best bereavement book that she ever read, but there is no such thing as a best bereavement book, and I don't really think it's bereavement. As I said to somebody when I started reading, if somebody comes up to me and says, I was very moved by such and such a poem, I'm sorry for your trouble, then it was a lousy poem. Anniversary, you left your shawl on the chair. I don't know why you did it. You never do things like that. I enter the room and there's the shawl. In the morning, the light hits it. Part of the fringe touches the floor now. It didn't used to. Sometimes I suppose gravity pulls it. Last night I thought I heard the chair say, how much longer? I'm not her shoulders. No, I said, you're not. In the morning, the weave catches the light when there is light. Doesn't this desk have a chair, the mover asked, in my body? Move it out? No, it's the first, I said. Oh, he said, good. The light hits the floor where the carpet was, or the hole where the floor was. You were always so careful about that shawl. You never wanted it to touch the ground. Why did you leave it on the chair then? You never did things like that. Again, a sonnet. Even the dying light is light. Even the dying light is light. Even love's last molecule before indifference begins is love. Even warped sense is sense. Immense the nouns, immense their tense. Years happen and adjectives wash away. At the end, not I was happy, but I was. Not she was radiant, but she. Lovely without lovely, and adverbs our big pretend. He thought well, he thought dully. The miracle is he thought. The miracle is he wept, not he barely wept or wretchedly. Who, what, not when, is love's finds, not how. These buckle the spectacle, beautiful you, decrepit you, is you, you, even dead you, is you. Rue de Bellechasse. This is the street and this the place. When I last saw you, you were wearing your Venice dress, white muslin with garnet ribbons at the wide square neck, your black hair loose and curly, your easy stride, your ankles always too thin, sandals of some sort, a silk shawl, not worn but lightly carried, for when evening came, because it gets cold in Venice in the evening. You coming toward me, that smile, clearly something you were dying to tell me, and were about to. The natural swing of things, missing from most of those paintings from the Cinquecento at the Louvre. Movements, yes, but not the natural swing of things. Corner of the Rue Las Cases, just by the little grocery shop. You'd died 3 months before, but then you never cared much about details. Do I have time for one more? If it's one more, then we'll close with this. Black Swan, White Swan. It starts with a long quote from a newspaper. A friend sent it to me in 2004, and the poem came instantly. An examination made in 1975 behind the town of Vedbæk in Denmark revealed the body of a tiny child laid to rest in the embrace of a swan's wing. Next to the skeleton was the grave of the child's young mother, dead in childbirth. Her face had been dusted with red ochre, the better to seem alive. Mother and child had been interred around 4800 BC. Black swan, white swan, bear my child, higher and higher to the isle, past the last star's dial, winkless, black swan, white swan. Black swan, white swan, bear my child in steep sleep, unreconciled, past the snares we defile, past our pile, to the tile, brinkless, live child, dead child, live child, black swan, white swan, black swan, white swan, bear my child, higher and higher to the isle. Live child, dead child, live child, linkless. Black swan, white swan, black swan, white swan, bear my child, past the circles wild and mild, higher and higher. Black swan, white swan, black swan, inkless. Swan child, child swan, one, my child, my swan, black swan, white swan, gone. Thank you.